Today, our first session is with Atousa Raissyan. Hey, Atousa.
Hello,
And
hello.
how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Awesome. So, our first topic will be um, discovering the space before thought. And Atousa is a shaman, transformational life coach, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, poet, and artist. She is dedicated to guiding individuals towards holistic well-being and life mastery through the magic of self-love. In her private practice, through her speaking engagements, and in the pages of her award-winning book, Change Yourself, Change the World, transform your life from fear-based living to choosing love and seeing magic, Atousa guides people to release their traumas and reprogram their fear-based living and shift to living a more heart-centered life. She's been referred to as a guiding light, life-changing, intuitive and gifted healer, magic by her clients. Atousa has been a guest speaker on numerous podcasts and at summits and workshops, as well as featured in USA Today, NYC Journal, MSN Trailblazers Women Leaders, Potomac Lifestyle Magazine, and Entrepreneurial Herald, among others. To learn more or book Atousa for your next event, you can visit her at her website, atousaraissyan.com, which will be linked with this video. So, hello,
Thank you, thank
Atousa.
you. I kind of want to go like this now as you were reading this.
Yes. So let's discuss this a little bit about how we find a place before thoughts when I think many of us feel like we're guided by our thoughts.
We are, as soon as we wake up in the morning, pretty soon after, um, there is a little bit of a break for some people. And for those with most likely PTSD, anxiety, ADHD, they probably don't even have that little break. It's so small that they don't even notice it. But this space before thought is basically the space that before an identity takes over, before a persona takes over, before you get entangled with all the things that sort of like your mom character, your wife character, your CEO character has to do and goes through like, oh, I got to do this. And it takes things from the past to the future and vice versa. It has all these memories and ideas and emotions that takes over with these thoughts that come up, and you get sort of lost in that character throughout the day. It has a big story, big identity.
And is there a simple way to start practicing trying to even recognize what those identities are? I mean, I think for many of us, we consider our identities, who we are at work, and we feel like that needs to be a very specific face, or that when we're dealing with our children, we feel like that needs to be a very specific space or identity forward that we're using. Do you have any suggestions for people to even recognize what those identities might be?
So the reason you are carrying the identities and you're so entangled with it is all fear. It's all fear based because you created some of these identities and the patterns and beliefs that go along with it very early on in the childhood. You get born and soon you start answering to a name, and then after that you recognize, oh, I belong to these two characters or whoever's there. And then with those interactions, more and more sort of safety and identities form. So the best way to start recognizing it, because for a lot of people, especially again, if trauma has driven most of your life, if PTSD, fear, anxiety, that has been the main storyline, main emotion, then it becomes hard to even slow down. We get caught up in the fear takes over, and you're just kind of like tumbling through day. So the best way is first awareness. Bring in awareness. Hey, my breath sort of right now is changing, or my heartbeat is changing. Anything you can bring awareness to, that, my muscle is any physical stuff. That's one of the best ways to come back inside. The other thing, again, if the storyline is really strong and you cannot break that storyline, that's when the first step is to just say, hey, I am taking responsibility of my life, meaning whatever's happened in the past, whatever's going to happen in the future, whatever's happening now, it is of my choosing, of my doing, and it's all within my responsibility. I'm the only one. That sort of stops all the noise, because then you can't point outside. That points you back inside. And then once you're pointed inside, then you can bring the awareness. Then you can see those thoughts and patterns that, hey, I was blaming myself. I was blaming the other person. I was blaming life, and I was, hating life, whatever those thoughts are. Then the forgiveness starts. And through that forgiveness, we start to let go. And then with forgiveness, especially when we're forgiving ourselves, self-love starts. Mm. And now you're opening up the heart. You're more loving and kinder to yourself, gentler with yourself. And within that space, then you're sort of looking around and, hey, I can trust this thing. I feel this shift. And then you build on that trust. And then it's sort of this cycle of rinse, repeat. You gotta do this throughout the day. And I cannot put a big enough emphasis that this is a 24/7 practice. Meaning, if you're getting up in the middle of the night and a character is taking over, an emotion's coming up, whatever thought is coming up, you're practicing. You're not following it. You're not getting into it. You got to come back to your practices.
Actually, I love that you said that you said that it's a practice, because I think that is one of the things, especially during the New Year time, that a lot of people are getting the message, we need to fix this right now. Everything has to happen right now in this moment, everything all at once, and it's all or nothing. And I love this idea of softness and this idea of consistent practice and willingness, really, to sit in that space, which, let's be honest, is not comfortable at all times.
It's not. Yeah. But the other thing I want to say, there is no fixing, which you're pointing out to. There is no fixing, and you don't even have to do any of this.
Yes.
If you are saying you're here right now listening to this because somewhere in you said, hey, I don't want to live this way. I want to change this in my life. I want to change this in myself. So you wanted the shift. You wanted something, a different experience than what you're currently experiencing. And the way to experience something different is either change perspective, which means change the person that's looking at it, this identity. You got to change that identity's perspective, different experience. But then again, you get into that identity's whole other storyline, and or just start releasing these identities, letting them go. And that's how you can experience being in the present moment. Because if there is no character that's tied to the past or the future, then all the experience is here and now.
And I like that you're pointing this out too, because it reminds me of a phrase that we hear all the time in spiritual circles, which is, you know, see what your attachments are, see what your desires are, and release what that is. And I will say that for a very long time, many years, that idea, I didn't quite understand it until I had your perspective of the idea that what it's the attachment of an identity. It's an
Hmm.
attachment of an avatar or some part of ourself. And that actually made it make more sense to me personally, to be
Yeah.
able to see where it is even that I'm engaged. Because I think half of the issues for a lot of people who are even looking to make these kinds of changes are really being able to see clearly, sort of where they're even engaging. Because sometimes we have emotions and feelings come up and we don't even know what they are or where they come from. And I'd like to say, I think that's part of the practice too, right? Is even just understanding how you are feeling in a given moment.
Yeah. And that's the awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness is the key here. That's why I started with awareness.
Yes.
But also with awareness, a lot of people, um, I don't want to say they are incapable of awareness, but they're resisting awareness because there is a fear of what am I going to find?
Yes.
And that's why that taking responsibility stops all that noise. It is my life. I am the only one. I don't care what's happened in the past. I don't care what's coming. This is all mine. I am the only one. And
Yes.
sort of that closes the loop. And now that this is mine, that's where the awareness, okay, let me start looking in.
And then choosing what to what to do, what not to do, what to sit with, what not to sit with. And I love the responsibility. And I think honestly, that's something we're almost trained against in a lot of ways. And especially when we're looking for healing in some way, or we're kind of searching out what that means. I think a lot of times it's easy to kind of go to the idea that, well, because this happened, that means I am a certain way, or I was born a certain way, and therefore there is no choice, as opposed to this is the experience I'm having, and let me see it and decide what to do or not do.
And I love what you're bringing out in terms of seeing that I am responsible for this. It is you taking it in and not using the labels that you've been given or you've taken on. That's
Yes.
saying, because of this, I'm this. Again, as someone that probably wasn't diagnosed, but if I could have gotten, if at that point the diagnosis was there, I am positive at a very young age when I was a kid, they would have diagnosed me with ADHD and PTSD probably. And I didn't have the diagnosis. And to be honest, a part of me never liked those labels. I was the one that, even when I went, I was probably in my late late teens when they told me, I had rheumatoid arthritis. I'm like, yeah, 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 whatever. Okay. I never took it on. Um, so, but if they did, they would have diagnosed me because definitely I couldn't concentrate to read because, every time I would start something and, fears and, am I going to fail? Am I going to do this? How am I, it starts going on. And fear of everything. I mean, I could, even well into my adulthood, I could, in any given moment, find from the simplest situation as you're opening up a cupboard to grab something to you're at a stoplight. I could come up with so many different scenarios that I could either I could get injured or hurt, or I could hurt or injure or break something or someone.
Yeah.
And just imagine you have these kind of thoughts every moment of every day when you're awake.
Yeah. Sounds exhausting.
It is. And if I can do it, if I can get to this space before thought, this space that a lot of us call it God self, higher consciousness, I am space, whatever you want to label it, it's the space before the thought takes over, before what is not true takes over, before you get into this story that it's an illusion because it's not real. If you stay in this present moment, in that minute of the second, millisecond, none of it is real.
I love it. I was just picturing a bubble.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just if you're encased in your bubble and you're living in that moment all of the time, everything is easier too, may I just say,
Mm-hmm.
when you're able to find that space. And I certainly am not consistently in that space, but it's a kind of an awesome, I just love the fact that we get to try. We get to experience. And then whatever that is, whether or not we find that space, just the act of having that as an intention, and just the act of, choosing to see if we can find that space moment to moment to moment to moment to moment.
But for a lot of people, believe it or not, even what we're saying brings a fear and anxiety. Well, what do you mean? Aren't you saying you're basically cutting yourself off from everybody? That you don't care about what's going on around you or the world around you? If you're just not thinking about other people or what's happening in the world, or what's going to happen to me if I don't have any of these characters? Are the people around me going to love me and want me? So all those questions come up.
That's
And
true.
again, those questions belong to an identity. It belongs to a mind that doesn't even exist. Mind does not exist. There is a brain, there's a heart, there's blood, muscles, tissue. There is no mind. Mind is a concept created by thoughts. You need the mind to have thoughts. The brain doesn't come up with thoughts. The brain's only function is to coordinate, right? What's happening with the heart. They're talking and coordinating everything that we're doing spontaneously. If I want to walk, I don't say, hey, let me bring the thought, mind, bring the thought of walking. And okay, nobody goes to the arms and like, hey, this is what it's very natural, spontaneous. That comes like even that desire to walk comes, and then suddenly the brain and the heart and everything else, they're working together and moving this body forward. Sitting, eating, pooping, all of it, natural. Everything's working by itself. There is no mind.
And I'm feeling that as you were saying that, and feeling that unity of self where everything is just functioning. And it was making me think about, see now, as soon as I said think, there's no word, there's no words for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I felt that. And I hope that you guys out there felt that too. So when you're moving from the heart in your day-to-day, what does that look like for you running through your day? Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that's a describable experience.
It does. I'm going to describe it a little bit differently. So as you are releasing identities, then there is a movement from the heart, because you are trying to sort of these characters, you're shutting them down. And as you're shutting it down, there's a part still like, there's still some identities there. So you got to check in with the heart. What feels good in here? You're trying to open this heart space up still and get it to naturally tell, everything else what's happening, what are we going to do. And as that's happening, yes, there is a bringing to the heart to decide, hey, what feels good in my heart? And then even that at some point goes away because there is no other kind of living.
Mm, that makes sense. Um, Along that same lines, the idea of easy is something you talk about. And in this idea of trying to, find this heart-centered space, um, I just would like to bring up this idea again of softness and
Mm-hmm.
ease within the choices that we're making. And I think many of us have found these things that are challenging more worthwhile for no reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we feel that the challenge is somehow innately valuable. And yeah, can you comment on that?
Because it's part of those challenges are part of the characters, and all of it also is part of this beautiful discovery of the purpose of why you're here in this physical form in the first place. Those things were sort of like in the programming, that so you find the space, find your truth, find the I am. And so, again, as you're trying to get to this place, as you're releasing these identities, because the choices and all challenges, all of that is needed for identities. Once their identities goes, everything goes. But as you're going through this process, then there's a let me feel what feels good in my heart. Or even if you cannot make choices that come from the heart, again, the fear is too much, the anxiety is too much. Get to this space of what is easy in this point. What is it that I can easily do in this moment? And when even that doesn't come, the easiest thing is to just sit 5 minutes and not do anything. Or if it's like, it's just too much right now and I just need to go outside, whatever that is the easiest choice. Follow it because that's going to lead you to wherever you need to be anyway. Everything is flowing. You're going to find that flow. So either find that space that's feels good in your heart or whatever's easiest in the moment for you to do.
And it feels like at this moment, I'd like to share when I first started this and I first started working with Atousa a few years ago. This idea in particular was so challenging for me. The idea of doing something easy felt like a cop out, and I was struggling with a lot of depression and a lot of physical pain and just a lot of anxiety. And I remember how hard it was to even just allow myself to sit on the couch and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But by doing that for several days in a row, that when I got super overwhelmed and I just started freaking out, wanting to cry, I don't know what to do with myself, I would sit down and I would just rest and I would breathe. And that by giving myself that tiny, tiny little nugget of allowing myself to have some space, I was then slowly able to take more steps, to find more space, and to be able to not get so engaged with every little thing that happened around me. And I
And
think, yeah,
that's what we said at the beginning, right?
yes,
It's a rinse repeat of all those things we
yes,
discussed at the beginning, and it's a practice because as you forgive yourself more, as
yes,
you love yourself more, as you accept yourself more, accept life and acknowledge life, it gets easier to be easy with yourself, to be
yes,
kinder with yourself, to give those moments of pause to yourself.
perfect. It's like the snowball running down the hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any last words you would like to leave us on?
Life is simple. We have made it too complicated by needing so many things on the outside, on the inside. Find simple in your life. Find simple spaces, simplify things, and again, take responsibility and awareness. Those two steps are all gonna get you there.
And also buying Atousa's book,
Oh,
Change
yeah.
Yourself, Change the World. Some excellent practical advice. Seriously,
Yeah.
guys. So if you get
And
a
now an
chance,
audiobook.
and now an audiobook. I love it. I haven't got to hear it read in your voice yet, but I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so
And
much.
yes, and that I hope everybody will join us for our next session coming up soon. Thanks.